Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Rob Franek, Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review, and today, my friends, we are tackling the top 9 historical periods and related concepts that you'll need to master to ace the AP US History exam come this May. And folks, there's a lot of ground to cover. Now, the College Board, the creators of all things AP, breaks down the historical events covered on the AP US History exam into those 9 key historical periods, beginning with that ever pivotal year, 1491, right up to present day. And of course, we can't fit every detail and event and policy into this one video. But the good news is that you're not asked to do that either on the exam itself. Feel the benefits, my friends. And let's just say this next part out loud with clear and crystal clarity, while you will obviously benefit from knowing more details than we're going to cover in this video today. The AP US History exam itself is directly focused on whether you understand key concepts in the time periods that we're about to discuss together than it is about whether you know each and every granular detail. So, even if you're learning the exact dates of important amendments and Supreme Court decisions, you'll want to be putting them into their historical context. In other words, into these very 9 periods of history that we are about to discuss together today. So without further preamble, my friends, let's jump right in. Historic period number 1 is early contact with the New World. And the years covered, again, 1491 to 1607. Now, the main concept that you'll want to understand here is the clash of cultures between diverse Native American populations and the Europeans arriving on their land, as well as how the Columbia Exchange revolutionized both European and Native cultures by expanding trade and technology to create a racially mixed new world. You should also understand how extended contact with Native Americans fostered a debate among European leaders about how non-Europeans should be treated. Another note, African slavery began during this time and gradually replaced Native slavery and European indentured servitude. That leads me to historical period number 2. Now, this is the colonization of North America from 1607 to 1754. Now, the key concept that you want to grasp from this period is how the 4 main colonizing powers of North America, and those are Spain, France, the Netherlands, and of course England, differed in their interactions with native populations. And to speak generally and broadly here, Spain tended to conquer and subjugate native inhabitants. France opted to ally with them through trade alliances as well as intermarriage. The Netherlands attempted to build the greatest trading empire ever, whereas the English colonies attempted to exclude Native Americans altogether. You'll also want to understand how Europeans battled with Native Americans for control of land and furs and fishing rights. Now, some of the pivotal conflicts that are important to remember are the Powhatan Wars, King Philip's War, and of course the Pueblo Revolt. That leads us on to historical period number 3, and this is the American independence. Now, this is the years covered, are 1754 to 1800. Now, the events over those next 46 years will mark the period of American independence, and you should understand full well how Britain's increased attempts to control the colonies and impose burdensome taxation led to a desire for revolution as well as a change in government structure. Colonists cited the values of personal liberty and democracy over monarchy and aristocracy. That leads us to historical period number 4. This is the beginnings of the modern American democracy itself, and the years that they cover are 1800 to 1848. Now, during this period, the newly formed United States struggled to define its ideals as the North, the South, and the West navigated sectional strife as well as regional economic differences. Now, the key concepts that you'll want to understand here are how new developments in technology, in agriculture, and in commerce built the United States wealth and infrastructure, leading to what we now call the market revolution. You'll also need to know the beginnings of social reform during the 19th century, including how abolitionists and feminists and temperance advocates organized to promote their ideas, and how slavery became one of the most important socio-political issues of the time. That leads us on to the next historical period, which is historical period number 5. That is the Civil War and Reconstruction. And the years covered are from 1844 to 1877. Now, this period is marked by the regional tensions over slavery, of course, and states' rights that led to the Civil War. And you'll want to have a firm grasp on the key battles there, which include the Battle of Antietam and, of course, the Battle of Gettysburg. You'll also want to have a solid understanding of the Reconstruction era itself. Now, it took the South many years to recover from the economic and the social upheaval of the Civil War, as well as the physical tolls that were rendered as well, to physically reconstruct southern towns and cities and property that had been destroyed during the war. This also meant integrating a newly freed black population into American society, giving way to the rise of insurgent terrorist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, as well as the White League. You'll also need to know both the successes and the failures of post-Civil War Reconstruction. Friends, that moves us to historic period number 6. That is the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is years 1865 to 1898, that all-important year. And folks, there is a silly amount of stuff to cover in this period. Now, the last quarter of the 19th century is often called the Age of Invention due to the many technological advances that happened during this period, like Edison's light bulb, which generated a need for mass production and urbanization, leading to the Industrial Revolution. Now, in the North, factories and cities were developed to minimize manufacturing costs, which relied on cheap labor from children and from women and from immigrants. And large businesses also encountered little to no government regulation, which in turn sparked the creation of labor unions and social reform in response to government corruption, as well as corporate abuse of power. Now, by contrast, in the South, agriculture continued to be the main industry. So you'll want to be well-versed in sharecropping, the advent of Jim Crow laws, and the beginning of separate but equal. Now, that's, of course, outright segregation established by the Supreme Court decision Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. You should also know about developments in the West, including the growth of ranching and mining industries, along with railroad construction, leading us on to period number 7. And that historical period is the early 20th century. The most important concept to remember from this period is America's transition from a largely rural and agrarian society to urban industrialized society. There was also increased federal government involvement during the Progressive era, wherein President Woodrow Wilson called for the federal government to assume greater control over businesses in order to curb corporate abuses. Now, America also became enmeshed in foreign conflicts. Study up on the foreign conflicts that led to World War I and also the aftermath of the war, including the rise of isolationism and anti-immigrant sentiment. Now, there are also some key congressional acts which you should familiarize yourself with that happened during this period. Number 1 on the list, the Espionage Act, and the second one is the Selective Service Act, and that's of 1917, as well as the establishment of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You should also be well informed about the Great Depression and the innovations in modern culture, including the automobile and the radio, which revolutionized daily American life. And finally, know about the events in foreign policies that all led up to the beginning of World War II, as well as the events during and after the war. That leads us to historical period number 8, which is the post-war period and the Cold War. And again, friends, there is a confirmed ton to cover during this 35-year period, But the main concept is to focus on the aftermath of World War II. So study up on the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union and the growing anti-communism sentiments that influenced foreign policy and gave rise to McCarthyism. You should also have a firm grasp on domestic policy during the Truman, Eisenhower, JFK administrations, as well as the civil rights movement, feminism, and the hippie counterculture that marked the 1960s. And of course, you can't forget about the Vietnam War and Watergate and President Nixon's resignation. That leads us on to a historical period, 9th on the list, number 9. It is, of course, the 21st century. Now, the years here covered are 1980 to present day. And friends, the key thing that you should focus on in recent history. First, be sure to know about notable events and policies that took place during the Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, and George W. Bush presidential administrations. You'll also want to study up on the intense political and cultural debates of the era, as well as the War on Terror and the interventionist foreign policies of the early 2000s in response to the 9/11 attacks. And finally, we can't forget about the dot-com bubble, the digital revolution of 1990 to 2010, where we, of course, said hello to the first time to the internet and e-commerce and cell phones. Whew! Folks, it is safe to say that that is a whirlwind of history that we covered just now. I'm hoping that you enjoyed this video as much as we did here at the Princeton Review making it. If you did, please do give us a like. And of course, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to our channel for the latest updates on standardized tests and college admission and study tips and a whole lot more. Rob Franek, Editor-in-Chief, signing off for today. Be well.